Hello guys, and welcome to this reactjs Redux persist tutorial. So in this tutorial we'll be creating a diary web app. So for this web app we'll have a few diary items and we'll be using Redux persist. So as you can see I have a few items right now, and if I refresh they are saved, so all the items would stay here. If we did this with the normal reactjs state, then this would all be deleted and we would have to add the items again. Also, if I close this tab and open it again, as you can see they are still here. So what we can do also is we can delete the item, we can add an item. So let's add an item, for example diary item number 3, and we can give it a date, and for example 14th of October 2021, and we can give it some text. So this is an item, and if we click add item to diary, this would add the item, and as you can see it pops up over here. So we can delete an item. So for example this item, I click the remove button and it will delete it, and we'll display the date over here, the title of the item, which is basically what we added over here. And if we click on the item, as you can see this is the text that we added, and this is the title, and this is the date, and we can close this modal. Please like and subscribe, and let's get started. So actually before we get started, I just wanted to thank everyone for all the support I've been getting. I already have 20 subscribers, and that is pretty crazy. My last video got over 200 views, so thank you. And now let's actually get started. So the first thing we want to do is open our terminal in our workspace. So I'm going to go to Finder, and I'm going to go to Documents, which is where my workspace is, and it's in React YouTube for me. And what you want to do is right click and then go on New Terminal at Folder. That's if you're on Mac. I'm not sure about Windows, so I'm just going to show you a way to do it. So you can open Terminal. So open your terminal and then CD to wherever your workspace is. So for me it's in Documents, so I'm going to do CD Documents. So this is how you would do it: CD Documents, and then it's in the React YouTube folder. So CD React YouTube. And now I'm inside the directory of my workspace. So now to create the app. So how do we create a React app? So the command is npx create react app, and then after this you put the name of the app. So in this case it's going to be a diary, and then click enter, and React should generate a whole React application for you. So now that the app has been created, let me show you how it is. So if you go to your workspace, which is React YouTube for me, as you can see we have a diary folder, and this contains the React app. So let's go ahead and open this folder inside Visual Studio Code or any text code editor that you like. So I'm going to do new window, open folder, and then go to Documents, React YouTube, which is right here, diary, and then open. So as you can see we have many folders and files. I'll explain all these later. So the first thing we want to do is actually run the app. So let's open our terminal inside Visual Studio Code. So terminal, new terminal, and then to run the app we can run npm start. So npm start, click enter, and it should run the app. And some of you might get this error, some of you it might just run it for you. So if you do get this error, make a new file and call it .env, which is used for storing environment variables, and then do skip pre-flight check, and we want to set that to true. Make sure to do this in capitals and underscores, but the true don't make it capital. Now let's save this file and start again. As you can see it's loading right now. And as you can see this is the project. So React gives you this code automatically once you create your project. So now I'm just going to delete all this code that is running this. So go to Visual Studio Code, source, and then app.js, which is where the code is, and I'm just going to remove this header, so delete all this. And okay, so now I'm going to explain these folders, but there are just some files that we don't need. So app.test.js, index.css, logo.svg, and setup.test.js. You can just delete those. Okay, so we get an error because we are using logo.svg over here in app.js, so remove that. And also in index.js we are using index.css, which we deleted, so let's remove that. Okay, so basically you might be confused right now, but what is happening is so index.js is rendering the app component, which is inside app, which is app.js basically. So it's importing it over here. So import app from /app, which is the path, and it's putting it so react dom.render. So this is used for rendering, and then it's rendering app inside document.getElement by ID root. So if I go to, so this is inside public / index.html. So everything is rendered inside this div with the ID of root. So what is happening is it's getting that div which has the ID of root, so document.getElement by ID. So it's getting the element which has the ID which is root, which is in index.html, which is this div that has the ID root. It's getting that div and putting everything we have inside there, which is basically the app component. And we are going to be linking everything to the app component, which is because the app component is being rendered inside root, and that is what will be displayed. App.css is just for styling for app.js. As you can see, we're importing it, and this, you don't really need to know what this is. Okay, so now let's actually get started with the project. So for the styling, I'm going to put the source code in the description, and you can get the styling from there. So I'm going to delete this and copy my own and paste my own styling here, because the styling can get quite boring and I don't want to bore you. I just want to go straight into reactjs and Redux. So this is the styling for this application. Okay, so now what I want to do is if we go to app.js over here, actually let's install Redux now so we can get started. So let's open a new terminal and run npm install Redux, and also want Redux persist and React Redux. We're going to need all three dependencies, and then we'll do -s, which means save, and I'll explain that later after this is installed. Okay, so basically what happened when we did -s, which means save, is if you go to package.json, so package.json is basically basically a file to store all your dependencies, like which ones you have installed. And basically when we did -save or -s, as you can see, it's in package.json in our dependencies, so Redux, Redux persist, and React Redux, and this is basically the version of it as well. And so basically sometimes node modules is basically the dependencies that we have installed, so basically these. So this is all the folders for these dependencies. So yeah, sometimes we need to delete this folder. Sometimes we get an error and we have to delete our node modules. And if we did not do -s, so to install all of these, we'll do npm install by itself, and it would install all the dependencies in our package.json. And if we didn't do -s, then Redux persist and Redux and React Redux would not be here. It would just be the folders for it would be in node modules. But when we delete node modules and we do npm install, React Redux and Redux persist and Redux would not be here. So when we do npm install, it would not be installed, and we'd have to install them again separately. But since we've done -s, then we could just do npm install, and it will be included in the installation of all these dependencies, because the name of it is here and the version as well is here. So I hope you understood that. It's not really important, but if you don't understand, like, you don't need to understand it, but the most important thing is you do -s when you install a dependency. Okay, so now let's actually get started. So as you can see, if we go to our project, we have a black page because this has got to do with the styling in app.css. If you did copy the styling, then you should have a black page. Okay, so now let's set up Redux. So the first thing we want to do is inside our app.js file. So what we want to do is go to the Redux documentation. So Redux persist is actually on GitHub, so Redux persist GitHub. Okay. So as you can see, if you go to the first one, and you go scroll down, keep scrolling down until you see this. So this is going to be the boilerplate code for our store. So let me just show you. So we're going to have a folder inside source, and we'll call it Redux, and we'll have three files. So we're going to have store.js and reducer.js. So don't worry, I'll explain this later. Reducer.js and actions.js. So as for store.js, you don't really need to understand what's happening here. I'll explain it if you want, but if you want to know, I'll explain it, but you don't need to know what's happening. So just copy this code and paste it in there. That's the only thing you need to do. You don't need to understand this, but I'll explain it. So basically what's happening here is we are getting the root reducer from reducer.js, which you would understand later actually. So let's implement the reducer, and then I'll explain this. So this is meant to be /reducer, not reducers, because we only have one reducer in this case. So the first thing we need to do in reducer is set our initial state. So const initial state is equal to an empty object for now, and we're going to have a arrow function for the reducer. So const, we're going to call it diary reducer, so diary reducer, and this is going to be an arrow function which takes in the state, and if there's nothing inside, if the state is null, then we'll set it to initial state, which is our state. So the state is going to be initial state, and we'll receive an action. So this reducer is going to be for the actions over here, actions.js. This will all make sense later, don't worry if you don't understand. And we're going to export this. So export default diary reducer. So, capital R over here. Okay, so basically install.js, we are importing root reducer from /reducer. So we are importing basically this diary reducer from reducer.js, and we are creating some persist config. This is for the persist reducer. So basically, when we create the persist reducer, we call the persist reducer from Redux persist, and we need to pass in the config. So this is the config for it, and we also pass in our reducer, which is the root reducer, which is imported from reducer.js. So this is our reducer. We need to pass that in as well. And then now we are just exporting the store, and the store, which is created by create store, and we just pass in the persisted reducer, which is the reducer that has been created for us. And also the persister would be created using persist store, which is also imported from Redux persist. And to create that, we just pass in the store. So if you don't understand that, don't worry, it's not really important. I might not have explained it well anyways. So we don't need to export it as an arrow function, so just remove that, and we'll just export it like this, so we can import it with object destructuring, and you'll understand what that is later. So export let store equals create store, and let persister equals persist store. So we're exporting it like this now. So now we've set it up in reducer, we've set up our store. We don't need to put anything in actions for now, because we don't have any actions, and don't worry, everything will make sense later for Redux. This is just setting it up. You don't really need to understand this part as well, you just need to know how to set it up. So app.js, if we go to app.js, now we need to set up Redux over here. So let's go back to the documentation, and as you can see, this is app.js. So just copy this and paste it in here instead of this class name app. And so basically the provider, we're going to import that from I think it's going to be from React Redux, and persist gate is imported from Redux persist integration React. And basically the store is we need to pass in the store, which is created over here. Export let store. So we're going to be importing this and passing it in. Let's actually do this now. So let's go to app.js. Let's import this stuff before I explain it. So import store. So this is basically object destructuring. So import store, and persister as well. We need that because we are passing it into the persist gate from /redux redux, and from /redux /store. So we are exporting these, remember, in the store.js. As you can see, we're exporting the store and the persister, and we're just importing them now, which over there it's creating our store and our persister, and now we are just importing them and passing them into the provider and the persist gate, which would then pass it into our root component, and which is basically, for now, it's going to be main. So I'm going to create a component called main, but not now, I'll do that later. So this will just pass in all of our data and the persister to main. And we need to import persist gate and provider as well, so let's do that. So import provider from React Redux, and we need to import the persist gate, so let's just copy this one right here. So copy that and paste it here, and now we should be, I think we should be good. Oh, let's create this main component. So inside source, let's make a new folder. So new folder, and we'll call this the containers. So we're going to have containers and components. The containers is going to be basically like the page, and the page is going to contain components. So the container is like a main component kind of, so that's why we have a folder for that. So let's make a new file, and we'll call this main.js, which is the main component. So I'm going to do RC Redux, which would create a Redux component. Just 1 second. So RC Redux, and if I click enter, this created a Redux component for me, a Redux class component. So to do this, you need to install an extension called this one, ES7 React Redux GraphQL React Native Snippets. So this makes coding with React much easier. So if, for example, if you want a React functional component, so we have two types of components in React. We have functional and class components, and mainly we will use class components when we want to use like a big state or Redux. So over here we use the class component because we want to use Redux as well. And we'll just use a functional component for simple components. So we'll do RFC React functional component that would generate us a functional component using the extension that we just installed, and we can do RCC React class component, and if we click enter, this would generate a class component for us using the extension that we have just installed. And just like I done RC Redux, which created a React class Redux component for us. I'm going to delete this because we have already made one over here. So as you can see right now, we have an error. It says main is not defined, and that is because in app.js we are using main component, which is main.js, but we haven't actually imported it, so it's not defined. So to import it, we'll do import main from /containers, that's the path of it, /main. So the path is containers /main.js. So if I save that, now the error is gone. It's just a warning, and this isn't really important. So okay, so now if I go to main.js, and I'm going to delete this div, so let's actually get started. So I'm going to do this, which basically, or you can do a div, so I'm just going to do a div so you don't get confused. So basically, I'm going to have two main divs, but you can only have one div, so one main div. So I'm going to put both of those divs inside this div, because if you have two divs, so let me just show you, you would get an error. So div, and now if I save, as you can see, we have an error because you can only have one main element, which is going to be this div. So we're going to have two divs over here, but let's get started with the first one, which is each div is going to be that card that I showed you in the beginning of this video. So the first div is going to be the card for adding the diary item. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so this div is going to have a class name of diary app, which is one of the styles in app.css, one of the styles that I have implemented in app.css, but don't worry about the styling. So just give it a class name of diary app so it looks nice. So okay, and we're also going to have a h1 that says dear diary ... So save that and let's see how that looks. As you can see, this is the card. And I'm going to give this div, the main div, a class name of grid container, because we're going to have a grid of two cards. If you remember in the beginning of the video, we had two cards, and so we're going to have grid container. So this is styling as well from app.css. So if I save that, now this is a line to the left, and we're going to have a card to the right for displaying those items. So now we're going to have a form for adding items over here inside this card. So I'm going to make a whole new component for that. So I'm going to call it, so I'm going to make a components folder inside source, so a new folder, components, and we're going to have a new component, and we'll call this diary form. So diary form.js, so one s, and then click enter. And this one is going to be a simple component, so we're just going to do a React functional component, RFC. And if you click enter, this will generate a React functional component using the extension that we have installed. So now for this component, we're going to have a form which contains the input for the title of the diary item, and a date input, and a text area, which is going to be a big input, and a button to submit that form. So let me just put some text here for now. So hello, and I'm just going to import this diary form. So let me just show you how to use components. So diary form, and it automatically imported it for me when I clicked enter, but if it didn't, you have to import it like this, otherwise it would say diary form undefined. So now if we save this and go here, as you can see it says hello, and this hello is being rendered from diary form over here. So as you can see, we put hello. Okay, so in this diary form, we're going to have a form element, so form, and inside this form we're going to have a div, so div, and it's going to have a class, so class name is equal to diary form, so diary form, and this is just some styling that I have implemented in app.css. And then inside this form we're going to have an input, And this first input is going to be for the title of the item. So I'm going to put placeholder. So this is going to be what's it says inside the input. So add an item, and I'll just show you what right now. So add an item, and if I go to here, as you can see, it says add an item. So I'm going to give this a class, so to make it look nicer. So the class name for this is going to be diary input. And now it looks, we have an error. What's the issue? Oh, I need to close this. Okay, as you can see, it looks much nicer now. And we're also going to have another input for this, which is going to be the date. So input, and then close it. And this, you have to give it a type, which is going to be, so it could be text, it could be email. So if you do email, if the person, what he put inside the input is not an email, it would give him an issue. Like, it will tell him this has to be an email. And there's different types of inputs. So this type is going to be date, and let me just show you what I mean. As you can see now, this is the date, and I can click here and you can choose a date actually. I'm just going to give this some styling. So class name is equal to diary date input. So if I save this, as you can see, it looks much nicer now. And you can change it over here, or you can click here, or you can actually write whatever you want. So as you can see. Okay, so now let's have the text area over here for the text of that diary item. So there's going to be a title, there's going to be a date, and now I want to put the text of it. So like there might be a long story of the diary item, and we want to allow the person to edit. So let's go ahead and do this outside this div. So text area, this is an element in HTML. So text area, and we're going to give it 2 rows, and I'll show you what this means later. We're just going to give it a class name of diary text area. Sorry, area. Okay, so as you can see, it looks nice now. So what the rows does is it just depends on how much the height is of this. So let me just show you. So if I make this 20, it's going to be really long, as you can see. But for now, I'm just going to put it as 2. Okay, so after the text area, we're going to have a button to submit this form. So this button is just going to be an ordinary button, and it's just going to say add item to diary, and we're just going to give it a class name of diary button, and we're also going to give it a type. So it could be a type button, or submit, or reset. So we're going to use submit, which is a type of submitting a form. So when we click this, it would automatically submit the form. So let's save that, and see, as you can see, it looks nice and pretty. So now let's go ahead and actually let the user add an item to his diary and save it inside Redux. So let's do this. So the first thing we want to do is actually go to our Redux folder and go to reducer.js. So our initial state is kind of going to be like our variables, our initial variables. So the first thing we're going to have is the diary items. So it's going to be the only thing we have, and it's going to be an array of items. So over here we'll be storing our items inside here for the diary. Okay, so now what we want to do is let me just show you how to actually get the items inside our component. So I'm just going to return the state over here. So whatever's inside initial state would be returned over here when we receive it, and we'll receive it inside main.js, which is our Redux component. And to receive this, as you can see, we have map state to props. So this gets the state from Redux and changes it to props for this component, and you will understand what props are right now. So we're going to have diary items. So this is what we would be calling it. So it would be this.props.diary items to access it over here, and I'll show you in a bit. And to access this is going to be state, which is being passed in for us, dot whatever is inside the reducer.js, as you can see, state.diary items. So this has to be the exact same name. So we're receiving it from there, so state.diary items. And now to actually display these diary items, if we go to inside this render, let's console.log, we have to do this.props.diary items. So this just changes this into props, and we can access it using this.props.diary items. If I change this to diary item, I would have to change this to diary item 2. Okay, so it's just going to log an empty array for us. So I'm just going to put some stuff inside here just to show you. So just some text. And now if I inspect element, so once the page is rendered, it's going to console.log this for us. So console.log, as you can see, we have an empty array, which should actually not be an empty array because we have a string inside it. Oh, okay, so the issue is inside application, so you need to go to application. So we already had the data that we had before, which was an empty array, is now cached. So we need to clear that cache. Sometimes you might face this issue with Redux. So go to application. If it's not here, click on this arrow and then you'll find application here. So application, storage, and then clear site data. So this is all the data that has been saved. So now if we go to the console, as you can see, we have an array with the string that we have added inside here. So I'm going to delete this because we don't want anything inside this. We want to be an empty array at the beginning, and we would like the user to add whatever he wants. So now if I go to main.js, as you can see, we can remove this console.log. We don't need it. And now to actually add a item to the diary items inside Redux, we need to create a new action. So to create an action, we need to export const. I'll explain this in a bit. Let's just do this first. So add. I need to make this capital, so add item, and this would be equal to the same thing, so add item. So this isn't really needed, but I'll show you why. So we're going to have an arrow function, so const add item. This is not going to be capitals, and this is going to be an arrow function, which would take in the item itself, and arrow function, and this would return an object for us. And so basically this object is going to be the action that is received in our reducer. As you can see, this is going to be the object that is received inside here. So if we go to here, so we'll return an object with the type, and the type is going to be add item, which is the constant that we have just created. We need to export this too, sorry. So export. Okay, so the type is add item. We could add this, we could not do this and just add this as a string like that. So add item, it would do the same thing, but it's better to do it the other way because sometimes you will need this. So and also the payload is going to be the thing the data would be receiving inside the reducer. So if we do action.type, we can receive the type, which is add item, and if we do action.payload, it would be the data we are receiving. So let's actually do this. So the payload is going to be the item we are receiving inside this arrow function, and this would return the object. So object with the type and the payload. So if we go to reducer.js, so we're going to have a switch function because we're going to have many actions, and we want to do do the thing based on what the action is. So if the action is add item, then we want to add the item. If the action is delete item, then we want to delete the item. So we need to do a switch function for that. So switch, and this switch is going to be based on the action.type. So remember, if I go to actions.js, remember we have the type, and the type is going to be add item. We're also going to have delete item, but right now we only have add item. So action.type, and we have case, so we'll do case. If the case is case, and then if the case is add item, so I'm going to be importing this from the actions. So import add items from actions, which is importing this basically, this add item, and it's basically going to be a string. So again, you could just do it as a string, but it's better to do it this way. So case add item, so we'll check if the case is add item, so the type is add item, then we want to return then we want to add an item, which is the item that has been passed into us. So what we're going to do is return an object with the copy of the state. So dot state would return a copy of the state, and would return a copy of the state, and we also want to update the items. So diary items, which is this, so diary items, and we want to change that. So before we finish this, I want to finish the diary form. So when we fill in the form and click submit, we would upload this to Redux. So I want to do this part before the Redux so you understand it better, so you understand this Redux part better. So for now, I'm just going to return a copy of the state. So I'm going to delete this actually. So for now, just getting a copy of the state. You'll understand this later. Let's just finish this part. So basically, we're going to have a state. We're going to use the useState hook inside diary form. So let's go ahead and do that. So this is going to be used to save whatever the person has put inside these inputs and the text area. So whenever the input changes, we would update the state, and you'll understand this as I do it. So const we're going to have, the first one is going to be the title of the item, so title, and we're going to have set title. So what this does is the title is going to be the variable that we would store our title in, and set title would be a function to change that title, to change the value of that title. And we'll do equals use state, which is going to be the React hook, and inside whatever we put inside this, then that would be the initial value of title. So for now we just want to be an empty string. We need to import useState. As you can see, we get an error because useState is undefined. We need to import it from React. So useState, sorry, to 1s. Okay, now the error is gone. And now we want to change this title based on the input, the title input. So what we want to do is onChange. So we'll check when the value of this input has changed. So when the person types in something new, then we want to do an arrow function, and we'll change the title. So we'll use set title. So set title, and we'll change it to whatever the person has put inside the input. So this will give us an event. So event, and if you want, you can console.log event and see what's in it and how to get the value, but I already know this. So event.target.value, that would give you the value of whatever the person put. Again, you could just console.log event and you'll understand this better. So to get the value, just do event.target.value, and then this would give you the value of whatever the person put inside the input, and it would set it inside text using the inside title using the set title function. And we'll actually want to do this for all the others, the date and the text area, so because we want to also store whatever he wants for the date and the text area. So let's copy paste this for the date and the text area, and we're going to have different states obviously. So let's copy this and paste it 2 times. So we're going to have one for the date, and we're going to have a set date function as well, and it's also going to be as an empty string, and we're also going to have set text and text. So set text, sorry, capital T here, or actually set and then capital T, and then text over here. And also in the date we want to do set date, not set title, because we'll be changing the date. So set date, sorry, capital D, and over here set text as well, because the text area is going to contain the text. So basically when the person changes the value of these inputs, the title, date and text area, then it would update the state. And we're going to use the state to give this data to Redux, and the Redux would add the data to Redux store. So now I want to implement a onSubmit. So const onSubmit function. So onSubmit is equal to an arrow function, and we'll be receiving an event, and that event will be passed in from the form. So when the form is submitted, so onSubmit, we would call this function. So when the form is submitted, so basically when the button is clicked, the submit button, then we would call this onSubmit function, and we would receive an event, because the submit is an event, and it would pass in an event, just like the change is the onChange is an event, and it would give us an event. This would also give us an event. And when a form is submitted, it would usually refresh the page, and we do not want to refresh the page. So to do this, we'll do event.prevent default, which basically prevents the default actions of this event. Sorry, prevent default. So this will prevent the default actions, which is basically like refreshing the page and other stuff that the form does when it's submitted. So after we prevent the form from refreshing the page, I'm going to close this terminal so it doesn't take that much space. I'm going to close that sidebar, make the code a bit bigger as well. So event.prevent default. After that, what we want to do is make a new object with with the title and the date and the text. So to do this, we'll do let's for example call it item object. So item object, which is equal to an object, and this object is going to contain the title, which is going to be equal to the title from state, which is basically the value of what the person put, as you can see from this onChange that I just explained. And we're going to do the same thing for the date and also the text. So text. So now we have an object with the title and the date and the text. Now we want to pass in this object to Redux, and Redux would add it to the state for us. We'll do that later. So let's actually go to main.js, which is our Redux component, and we need to create a function that goes to Redux and passes in this object. So to do this, we need to go to map dispatch to props. So this would be our actions. So this is going to be arrow function actually. So do this. So arrow function, and it would return an object. So do this like that. And this object is going to contain the functions that we want to dispatch to props. So just like we did the map state to props, so we change the state to props and we accessed it as this.props diary items. If you remember, we're going to be doing the same thing with functions. And if you don't remember the state, you're going to remember it once we do the dispatch to props now. So we're going to have remember we did the add. If we go to actions, as you can see, we have the add item. We want to import this now inside main.js. We want to use this. So add item. This, it doesn't have to be the same as what we called it in actions, because this is going to be this.props.add item for this component. But this is going to receive this is going to be an arrow function, and we're going to do dispatch. Sorry, dispatch, not dispatch event, and this add item has to be the same as what we called it. So I'm going to automatically import it actually. So this add item has to be the same as what we called it in the actions.js, and it automatically imported it for me from actions.js. So okay, so this dispatch, we need to receive it in the arrow function, so let's put that here. And for the add item, remember we're going to be receiving an item, so just pass that in, that object that we created with the title, date and the text. So we're going to be receiving that, and we'll pass it into the add item function, add item action in reactions.js, and this would set it, so it would receive the item, remember, and it would set it to payload, and the reducer would receive the action and we will do what we want with it. So if I go back to diary form now, or actually no, back to main.js, and now we have the add item as props, so we can use this over here inside this component now. And I'm going to use object destructuring to receive these, so const, sorry, 1s. So basically you can do this dot props dot add item, and this would be a function actually, or you could receive it as you could do it with object destructuring. So we'll just do const add item equals this dot props. So we'll just take add item from this dot props, and what we also have diary items in this dot props, so let's actually do that as well, because we're going to be using it. So now we are just receiving add item and diary items from this dot props. We need to actually add this inside the render function, so over here. And now to actually, we need to pass in this add item function to the diary form, so we can actually add the item from the form. So let's do this. So passing it in as props, and you'll understand this in a bit. So add item, this is going to be passed in as a prop to the diary form, and this would be an arrow function that would receive the item and pass it into the add item and call the add item action in Redux. So I'll explain this again, but let me just tell you about these props. So if I go back to diary form, and over here we can receive this prop as props, and then we can do over here props dot add item, and remember we're going to pass in this item object, and we can receive it as props and do props dot add item, or we can do object destructuring just like we done for the props inside our main.js. So we can do it like this. So const add item is equal to props. Over there it was this dot props because it was a class component. Over here it's a functional component, so we just do props. And yeah, so you could do it like that as object destructuring, or you can also do it object destructuring over here and do add item. So you could do it from the beginning, object destructuring, and you won't have to do props to add item over here because we're already receiving it as add item now. So I prefer this way much more. So okay, so basically what's happening, let me explain all of this again. So add item, we are calling this add item function that is being passed into us as props. We are passing in our item with the title, date and text, which is what the user has added, and we are passing them into the add item function, which is being passed in as props to this component from main.js. And if I go to main.js, it would receive the item we are passing in from diary form component, and it would pass it into the add item, which is it would pass in the item to the add item action, which is being dispatched to props from Redux, and this would dispatch the add item action from Redux, which is the one we imported over here, and would pass in the item that we have created, which contains the title and the date and the text, and the actions over here, the add item function would receive it as item, and it would set it as the value for payload. And then we'll receive this in reducer, so the action, remember, we'll receive it in reducer. And now what we want to do is return the state, and we want to update the diary items now that we are receiving the new item. So each item is going to have a unique ID. So when we delete the diary item, we would find the item we want to delete by the ID and delete it. So we need to give each one a unique ID right now. So to do this, we're going to do let ID is equal to 1. So the initial ID would be 1 if there is no diary items. But what we want to do now is we want to check if the diary items has more than if it has items. If it does, then that means there already is an item with the ID of 1. So we want to change the ID. So how do we do this? We want to check if state.diary items dot length, so we're checking the length of the array. If it's bigger than 0, then we want to change the value of ID, which is going to be, so we'll do ID is equal to, and we're going to receive the first item from the array of diary items, and we would get the ID of that and increment 1 to that. And the first one is going to be the newest one, which would which would mean that one has the biggest ID. So we'll add 1 to that, and this one would have the biggest ID, and each one would have a unique ID that way. So we'll do diary items state.diary items, state.diary items and then we'll do 0. So we'll get the 0th element, which means the first element, and then we'll do .id. So we're receiving the ID of that element, and would add 1 to this ID, and would store that inside ID. And this ID would be used for the ID of our new item. So let's make an object called, so that item is equal to object. So we're going to have an object, and this object is going to be the object of our item. So it's going to have an ID, which would be the ID that we have just created. So ID is equal to ID, and we're going to have, remember, the title, which is being passed in as action.payload.title. So action.payload.title, because remember, if we go to actions, as you can see, we are receiving the item and putting it in payload. And what is the item? It is inside diary form. As you can see, we have this is the item, and this contains the title, and it contains a date and a text. So we are receiving this, and we are going to do inside reducer, and we are going to do action.payload.title, and that's for the title. And then for the date, we are going to do action.payload.date, and also for the text, we will do action.payload.text. And now we have created our item. We just need to update the state with this item. So to do this, we'll do diary items over here inside. We'll return the state, and we need to do this inside return. So diary items, and we need to make an array, and in this array we would pass in the new item plus the old item. So so we're getting a copy of the state, of diary items. So we are passing in our new item at the beginning of the array. So we know that the first item of the array is the biggest one, has the biggest ID. So we can increment the ID by 1 over here. So we have a unique ID for each item. So we pass it in as at the beginning of the array. So it's always the 0th element. And we pass in the item, and then we pass in a copy of the state. So the old items plus the new item, and that would be our new state. So now it should be working, everything should be working. And if I go to main.js, I'm going to console.log our diary items that we received, and to see if when we add an item it's actually being added. So console.log diary items, and now let's see if this is working. So if I go to Chrome, and I'm going to make this laptop large actually. So laptop large, okay. Actually, I'll just put it back to the laptop actually, that's better. Okay, so I'm going to add an item. So for example, hello, and I'm going to give it a date and just some text. And I'm going to do add item to diary, and we have an error, cannot read properties. Oh, so this issue is because we are trying to receive diary items, but we are not returning it in our reducer. So basically, we are only returning something if the case is add item. We want to have a default case if the person is not doing an action. So like it's just he just wants to receive the state. He's not just like what we are doing in main.js. We're not actually doing an action like adding item or deleting item. So the default action. So default, we need to do default, and the default thing would just return the state. So if he isn't adding an item or doing any action, then that means he wants to receive the state and display it on the page or do whatever he wants with it. So we'll just return the state for him. And I'm going to do option shift F to clean this code. If was cleaned using the extension we downloaded, and if you're on Windows, then you have to do Alt Shift F, and if you're on MacBook, Option Shift F. And now I'm going to save this, and now this error should be gone. So if I refresh, we have no more errors. Yes, and we have an empty array. And now I need to add an item. So just put some text, add item, and now as you can see, we have an item. We have an object inside this array of items, and this is the object. It has a date, which is what we put, 6th of October 2021. 6th of October 2021. The ID is 1 because this is our first object, and so the ID is going to be 1. And the text is SSS, which is the text we put over here, and the title is 4 S's, which is the title we put over here, as you can see. Okay, so now we are able to create these items. Now we are creating it for a reason. We want to display these items to the user. So I'm going to close this, and also we're going to have a card over here as well, just like this card, for displaying these items. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go back to main.js, which is our main component. And remember how I said we're going to have 2 divs over here, so I'm going to make another div. And it's also going to have the class name of diary app, just like this one. So I'm just going to copy this. And okay, so for this one, we are going to display all the items. So for now, I'm going to remove this console.log because we don't need this. So I'm just going to do, so we need to open these, and then I would be receiving the diary items from props. So diary items, and then first I want to check if there are diary items, because if there isn't, we're going to just put some text which says no items. So if there are diary items, so to do this we do a question mark, and whatever we put after the question mark would happen if there are diary items, and then we put a colon, and whatever we put after the colon would happen if there is no diary items. So if there are diary items, then I want to return something, so let's do that. So to return, you just to open these. And actually, diary items is always going to be like, there always is going to be a diary items, which is going to be an empty array. So this would always be true, but to actually check, we want to do dot length is bigger than 0. So if the length of that array is bigger than 0, that means there are diary items, and if it isn't, that means there isn't. So now we'll return something over here, and we'll do colon, which means and whatever we put after the colon, it means if there is no diary items, then we'll put something. And what we're going to put is just a h1 that says, sorry, h1, no, why does it say div h1? And this h1 would say, why do we have an error here? Actually, we can remove these because we're just going to have a h1, so I'll just put it like this, h1, and then no items. So the issue is that we have nothing inside here, so I need to add something. So I'm just going to put, for now, there are items. There are items. And it's actually better to do it this way, so it's more clean. So let's do that. And I'm going to put Option Shift F, and if you're on Windows, Alt Shift F to clean this code, and then Control S to save, and go back. As you can see, there are items because we already have some items. So, and if I remove the items, so remember inspect elements, and if we go to application, so application, and clear the site data, which would delete everything we have, which would return the Redux state back to an empty array. And if I go back, it says there are items. If I refresh, no items, as you can see, because we have no items anymore. We cleared all the data we had. Okay, so now what I want to do is actually display these items. So I'm going to do that instead of saying there are items. So let's remove that, and we want to do diary items dot map. So we're going to go through all the diary items, and we'll do an arrow function, and we'll receive the item for each one. So Option Shift F, I'm going to clean this up a bit. Okay, so we'll receive an item for each one, and we're going to display this item using a diary item component. So we're going to make a new component called diary item. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go to components. I'm going to save this first, and then go to components, make a new file, and we'll call this diary item.js. And remember RFC for React functional component using the extension that we downloaded. And now for the diary item, we are going to receive some props, just like we received a prop over here, add item inside diary form. We're going to receive some props here. and actually let's display this for now. So diary item, click enter for automatic import. If it didn't automatically import it for you, then import it this way. So import diary item from // which means outside of this folder. So we're in a container, so it means go outside of this containers folder and then go to components folder and then diary item file, and we're importing it from there. Okay, so this diary item is going to receive some props so we can display the item. So we'll just pass in the item to this diary item for now. So item, and then inside our diary item I'm just going to display the item.title for now, just so you can see. Sorry, item, and we need to receive this as props, remember. So we can receive it as props, just like I told you, and then do props.item.title, or we can do it as object destructuring over here, and this is the preferred way. So I'll just receive the item like this, and we won't have to do props.item.title now. So save this, and if I go back and I refresh, we have no items right now, so I'm just going to add that item, give it a date, and give it some text, and the color of the text is white. We need to change that to black, so automatically it would be white, I think. So I'm just going to give it some styling. Color is equal to white. Sorry, save this, and sorry, black, not white. And if I save this and refresh, there seems to be an issue. Let me check the console. There's no errors here. So it's still not showing, and that's because we are not returning the diary item. So I'm pretty sure the default color is actually black, not white, so we don't even need this style. We'll just keep it there just in case. And if I go to main.js, this is a function, and we need to return this diary item. We didn't return it, so we can do return diary item. So we need to return this. We can we can just let me take this, and we don't need to do this as a function. We can just return it and then do like that. So we can just return it at the beginning instead of doing a function and then doing return. But I prefer doing it like this. So I'll save this, so I'll make a function and then return whatever I want. So I'm going to be returning the diary item component. So if I save this now, as you can see, this is our item. If I have another item which contains a lot of S's and a new date, some more text, as you can see now, this is our new item. Okay, so I want to make this much nicer, so let's actually go to our, I want to display the date and remove icon. So I'm going to go to the diary item and let's do some styling. Okay, so we're going to have for this div we're going to have a class name which is diary row. So class name equals diary row, which makes it much nicer. If you see, go back, as you can see, it looks much nicer now. And what else I want to do is give this a put this inside the span, sorry, which is just going to be used later for something, but for now just put it inside the span. And after this we're going to put a div. We'll have a div for our delete button and the date. So we're going to have a span for the date, so span, sorry, not one s, and then we'll put item.date. So item.date, so option shift F, clean it up, and this is going to have some class name, some styling, which is going to be date, and also we're going to have a delete button, which we're going to do in a bit. So if I refresh, as you can see now, it's displaying the date for us as well. So now for the icon, for deleting the icon, I'm going to use React icons. So we need to install this. So let's go to our terminal and let's run npm install React icons. So npm install, sorry, 1s React icons, and then run by -s to save it in package.json as well in our dependencies. So while React icons is installing, I just want to show you, if you go to React icons and click on the first one, it's GitHub. It's on GitHub. So if you go to React icons, and then you can search for all the icons you want. So we're going to be using a delete, and you can just click enter and it would search for delete icons. But right now my internet connection, I think it's not working, so I need to fix that. Sorry about that, my internet is very bad. So as you can see, if you search delete, you have so many icons, and these are still loading for me because my internet is very bad. So we're going to be using one of these icons for our delete icon. Okay, so search delete, and I'm just going to choose any of these. let's choose this one, ti delete outline. So ti delete outline. So to use this, if we go to diary item, I'm going to close my terminal now. To use this icon, what we want to do is to import it. We need to do this. So import, and then open these object destructuring, and then ti diary icons. So what was it? Ti delete outline. It's not diary icons. Ti delete outline, and then we import this from react icons. So react icons, and then slash whatever the first two letters are of the icon, which is ti for us, ti. So there's many. If you wait, sorry, I think okay. So if we go back, as you can see, there's ri, md, ai. So each one you choose, you have to import it from react icon slash the first two letters. So we have ti, and we do react icon slash ti, and you import it using object destructuring. Okay, so now let's actually use this icon. So ti delete outline, and close it. And now for this icon, I'm going to give it a class which is delete. So just give it some styling, and let's see how that looks. So if I save this, as you can see, this is the icon. I'm going to give it a color of red. So style is equal to, you can do styling like this and pass in an object. And styling is pretty much like CSS. If styling in React is pretty much like CSS. So color is equal to red. But the only difference is from CSS is, for example, on CSS you'll do align items like this. In React you would use camel case. So you'll do align and then capital I items. So okay, so we want to make this red. So it's color red, and now as you can see it's red. This date, I think the class name is not being added. And this console.log, we also don't need that. Okay, so I know this date isn't centered, but we don't really care about styling. This tutorial is about React, so let's just keep going. So also I just want to give this div some padding top, because as you can see this is kind of stuck to the top, so let's just give it a bit. So do style, and remember I said styling in React is, so in CSS you'll do padding dash bottom, but in React you'll do padding and then capital B, which is called camel case. And then you can do 20, and that would automatically do 20 pixels, or you could do 20 pixels like this, I think. But if you want to specify like EM or REM, then you have to put in a string. Otherwise you could just do 20 and that will do pixels for you. And now if I refresh, sorry, padding top, not padding bottom. So let's go back and change this to padding top, and as you can see now it has some padding on top. Okay, so now what I want to do is when the user clicks on the item, I want to open up a module that has all the details of the item. So we want to also display the text, so we'll display that in a module, because sometimes the text could get too long and we don't want to display it like this. We want to display it in a module. So to do this we're going to be needing React Bootstrap to give us a module. So let's go ahead and install this. So let's go to React Bootstrap, and click enter, go on the first one, and then click get started, and now let's install it. So we don't need this, so just do npm install. So this, just copy this part up to there, and open up your terminal and paste it, and then do -s to save it in package.json, just like I told you at the beginning. And while this installs, we also need this cdn. We're going to need this for the styling, to import the styling from React Bootstrap. So this is already installed now. So we need to put this inside index.html as one of the links. So this would give us all the styling from Bootstrap. Okay, so now let's go back to our main.js, and actually let's go to React Bootstrap and let's search for modules. So module. Okay, so sorry, let's go to components and search module. I do not know. Oh, I think it's, I have to go search module and then, oh yeah, here. So click on modules and then let it load. Okay, so let's just choose any module. So I'm going to choose this module right here. So just copy, actually no, not this one, I want a bigger one. So So let's keep going down, find something bigger. So this is the module we want to use, the large module, and as you can see, if we click, this is the module we want to use. And to find this, just Command F or Control F, optional sizes, and this would find it to you. So optional sizes, so 1S, and then as you can see here, or you can just click on optional sizes over here on the sidebar, and then we want to copy this one. This is the large one, so there's two. This one's the small one, this is the large one. So let's Command C on this, or Control C. And what we want to do is put this inside this grid container. Actually, let's put this outside the grid container, but remember I said we need to put everything inside one div. So let's copy all of this, Control X to copy and cut, basically, and put everything inside the div, and then Command V to put it in. Okay, so now we have a module outside of everything. So how do we use this module? So we need to show it based on so we need to have a state for this. So how do we implement a state inside the class component? So remember we did it inside diary form. We did it like this for functional components. We used the useState hook. But for class components it's different. We need to do it like this. So constructor, so we need to do it outside the render function. Constructor. And then we need to call this super function because we are extending a React component, so we need to call this. You don't really need to know what it does exactly, but yeah. And then we need to do this dot state, sorry, dot not comma. Dot state is equal to an object, and now this would be our state. So remember how we did in Redux inside reducer. This is our initial state, is just an object. So this would be also, this is our state. This is just an object, but this state is just for this component, and this state goes back to its default values when we refresh the page. The Redux state, no, it gets saved. Everything is saved there. So now for this one, we're going to have a show. So this is to show the module or not to show the module. So the show is going to be set to false at the beginning, because at the beginning we're not going to show the module. And also we need to import these modules. So we'll do that later actually. But right now we'll get errors because module is not defined and module.header, module.title. So show will do, for the show we'll do show, so we'll show it based on the show from our state. So if the show is true, then it would show it. If the show is false, then it would not show it. And on hide, so when the module is hidden, so so when we click this X button, so over here we have a close button as you can see for the module header, and when we click that it would hide it. So this is what would happen. This is what would happen when we click the button. So on hide, we want to change the show to false, so the module closes. So this dot set state, and set state. Sorry. So remember how inside diary form, this is a functional component. We have set text for text, set date for date. For class components, we just have set state for the whole state, and then you can choose what you want by opening an object, and then we change what we want. Which for now we want to change the show, so we do show, and then we want to change it to false because we want to hide the module. Okay, so now let's actually use this module. So whenever a diary item is clicked, we want to show the module, and we want. Okay, so to do that, we need to go to diary item. Well, actually no. First, we want to do module show or show module, and this is going to be an arrow function, and we'll also receive an item. I'll explain why. And when we do show the module, we'll do this dot set state. Sorry, this dot set state. What the hell is that? This dot set state 1s, and set show to true because we want to show now. So show module, if we go to diary item, we would receive this as props. So show module, and this is going to be a function, so we need to use it as a function. So remember when I said we would put this item.title inside the span. So we did that so we can implement the onClick. So when the title was clicked, sorry, onClick, not on change. So do onClick. So this would take an arrow function, and then for this arrow function, so when this is clicked, this span is clicked, we want to show the module. So we'll call this show module, and we want to pass in our item that we want to show inside the module. So you understand why we're passing it in. So inside the state, we're also going to have active item. So this is the item that would be shown inside the module. So active item is for now, for the beginning, for the start, is just going to be null. So this is going to be its value at the beginning. Active item is going to be null, and then when we want to show the module, we would pass in the item we want to show as well. So it would be active item, we would set it to the item that is being passed into the arrow function from the diary item. And then over here inside large module, so this is our title for the module. We need to import module, so actually let's do that first. So this is going to automatically import it for us. So if you click enter, as you can see, it imported module from React Bootstrap. And okay, so instead of large module, the title, we want to put our own title, which is going to be the item title. So first thing we want to do is check, so active item. If there is an active item, then we'll do .title. So active item, and then we do the question mark. If there is, then we do .title, so active item .title, and that would show the title. And we want to do this same thing for the body. So we'll do active item, and we want to check if there is, then we'll do the text inside the body. And we'll also have a model footer, so let's do that. So model.footer, sorry, capital F. And then for the footer, we'll show the date. So we'll do active item, sorry, inside this. So active item, and we check if there is, then we'll show the date. And now Option Shift F to clean the code, or Alt Shift F for Windows. And now let's check how this looks. So if I go to this, show is not defined, active item is not defined. Sorry, this .state.active item and this .state.show. But what I'm going to do is use object destructuring to receive this. So to do this, we'll just go to here, just like how we did all the props. We'll do this for state. So const, sorry, 1s. We're receiving show, and we're receiving active item is equal to this .state. So remember, in the functional component, when we implemented the state inside diary form, we'll just use it as text. So over here, for example, we'll just do text, we'll just do date, we'll just do title. But in a class component, we need to do this .state.title, this .state.date, this .state.text. So for now, oh sorry, to 1s here. So we're just going to use object destructuring to take it from this .state, instead of each time we do this .state.active item when we want to get the title. So we'll do this .state.active title, active item.title, and then this .state.active item.text. So we'll just do active item.title, active item.text instead. It's much more efficient this way. So now let's see if this is working. As you can see, also the date is now centered for some reason. I do not know why, but it looks much nicer now. That's better. So as you can see, if I click on this, now it shows a module, and we have a close button as well. And this is the text, and this is the title, and this is the date. So let me just actually add I can't delete this right now because we still haven't implemented the delete item, and that would be the last thing we need to do actually. So let me just add a item, so diary item, and give it a date, and this is some text, and add item to diary. Now if I click on this, as you can see, this is the text that we added, this is the title, and this is the date. Now we can close the module. Okay, so now what we want to do is want to delete the item when the delete icon is clicked. So to do this, we need to do the same thing we did with the item. So we want to make a new action. So let's copy this, and we'll call this delete item. So remember capitals here. Delete, and copy this, put it in here. And now I want to copy this as well, this arrow function that returns an object. We want to do delete item instead of add item. And we'll receive the ID now. We don't want to receive the whole item. We'll just delete it. We'll just find it by find the item by the ID, and then delete the item when we find it. And then the payload, we're just going to pass in the ID as the payload instead of over here we passed in an object. Remember, that contains the title, the date, and the text. Over here we're just going to pass in an ID, which is the number. Okay. So and then inside reducer, what we want to do is check if the case is. Remember how we have case add item. Now I want to do case delete item. So case delete, and we'll automatically import that from actions. If it didn't, import it from /actions. And so if the case is delete item, then we want to return the state, obviously. Sorry, not capitals. Return, and we'll return a copy of the state. And we'll now want to update the diary items, so diary items. And we're going to set it to state.diary items, and we want to filter them, so we'll implement the filter method, and we'll receive each item the arrow function, and we'll check if the item.id is equal to action.payload, which is the ID that we want of the item that we want to delete. So if the item, sorry, not equal, so if the item, this item ID is not equal to the ID that we want to delete, then we'll return it inside diary item. So it's okay, we don't want to delete this one. Unless it is equal, then we do not want to return it in diary items and we want to remove this one. So we'll automatically remove it. Okay, so this should delete the item. So now let's actually link this with our we need to save that. Sorry, I didn't save this. So we need to link it to our main.js now. So let's receive this delete item action. So let's make it over here, change it to props. So delete item would be an arrow function, receive an ID, dispatch the delete item action. So delete item, and I'm going to automatically import this and pass in the ID. So automatically import it over here. So import it if it did not import it for you, or you're importing it from our actions.js. And now remember, we will receive this as props, so let's just receive it using object destructuring as well. Delete item, and now let's pass it into our diary item, just like we passed in the add item over here to the diary form. Let's pass in the delete item to our diary item. So let's do that. So delete item is equal to an arrow function, just like we did with the add item. We're going to receive an ID, and then we'll call the delete item function and pass in the ID. And now we need to go to diary item and receive this delete item function as props. Sorry, delete item. And now that we are receiving it, we can delete an item when the person clicks on this icon, the delete icon. So we want to implement an onClick, and when he clicks, we want to do an arrow function that just calls this delete item. So delete item, and we pass in the item.id. So we're passing in the ID of that item. And then, okay, so let me go through this again. So when the person clicks on the icon, we will call this function that has been passed into us as props, and we'll pass in the ID of the item we want to delete. And this function is being passed in as props from main.js over here. And when we do call this function, we will receive an ID and call the delete item function that has been changed to props over here from map dispatch to props. And this would call the delete item function from Redux that we have imported from actions, and would pass in the ID of that item that we have received. And if we go to actions.js, we have the delete item here with the type of, sorry, delete item here. We need to change this type. This is very important. And if the type, and then we'll pass in the type delete item, and the payload would be the ID of the item. And we go to reducer, we're checking if the case is delete item, so in this case it is. We'll return a state, and we'll filter the diary items based on the ID of that item. So now let's see if this is working. So it should work. So if I refresh, we don't need to refresh. And if I delete this, as you can see, it has been deleted. And I delete this as well, they are all deleted. Okay, so we are done with this tutorial. I hope you have enjoyed this. And also, please like and subscribe. I just want to say that that I have a few courses on Udemy if you would like to check out, and Skillshare. The links for that are in the description below. Thank you.